Hey, what's up, guys? It's Aaron, or LM9, and today, after a very, very long wait, I finally finished the second batch of custom LEGO minifigures from The Mandalorian. Now, this project has been one that went through a lot of delays throughout this year, which I really am sorry for, but those delays allowed me to spend a lot of time experimenting with new techniques, which resulted in a lot of these figures being some of my all-time favorites that I've made in my 11 years as a LEGO customizer. Now, the 10 figures included in this video are mainly from Season 2 of the show, consisting of Cobb Vanth, Bo-Katan, Koska Reeves, Ahsoka Tano, Fennec Shand, Boba Fett, Migs Mayfeld, some Dark Troopers, and Luke Skywalker. Now, we have a lot to get through, which is actually the most figures I've ever had in a single video so far. So, without any further delays, let's go ahead and take a look at these custom LEGO minifigures. We're going to start things off with Cobb Vanth. Now, while Cobb only appeared in the Season 2 premiere, I wanted to make him just to have a figure with Boba's extremely damaged armor without making two Boba Fett figures, not to mention Cobb is a pretty cool guy all around. Now, the figure is armed with a Brick Arms blaster pistol, which can also be swapped out for the rifle that he uses in the episode as well. But taking those away can let us take a better look at the figure. Now, the legs have the sculpted knee pad and some E-tape straps for the boots, as well as a tiny tactical pouch on the side. There's also some pockets and some patches painted on here and there, and I tried to add some blushing to the pants to make them look a little worn down. Moving up, there's a 3D belt that's made out of some vinyl with a buckle and a pouch on it. Now, the torso is actually a resin cast of my Mandalorian armor piece that I made a while back, late last year, I think, which was then painted up in its respected colors. Now, one thing I am really pleased with on this torso is that fire spray logo on the chest. It was definitely a challenge to paint something that small. The arms are also casts of my Boba gauntlets, which were then painted up. One noteworthy thing on these is the Mythosaurus skull on his one shoulder. I also sculpted the scarf around his neck. Now, the jetpack on his back is a Clone Army Customs pack that was then modified, fitted with a new rocket, and then painted up. Now, the helmet on this guy is probably my favorite part of the figure. This was sculpted by me and then casted so I could have a bunch of copies of it. It's probably my favorite thing that I've ever sculpted, so I hope to offer some casted copies of this up for sale, hopefully at some point in the future, but I'm not going to make any promises anytime soon. Now, one thing I did want to say is that all of my sculpts that I mentioned here that I get casted are casted by a guy named Forge510 on Instagram. I've mentioned him before, but a big part of the delays behind this project were due to him having to go through chemotherapy. Now, it should go without saying that going through chemo and recovering from it is way, way more important than casting my LEGO parts, but some people out there are actually giving me grief for taking so long with this project, so I just want to be upfront, be transparent about some of the delays. So, as usual, Forge did an amazing job with the casting on these parts. I'm just really happy to have that opportunity to have some duplicates of sculpts that I'm really proud of. So like I said earlier, I wanted to make a version of Boba's armor that was beat to hell, so I used some Citadel Runefang steel and some Iron Breaker for the battle damage on this guy, which is spread across his helmet, his torso, and his gauntlets and his shoulders. As well as some, very light dabs of some Tamiya silver weathering. There's a weathering kit that's really nice where you can just brush it on, and it works wonders to help you kind of blush out your armor. So definitely recommend picking that up. But underneath his helmet is a painted face for Cobb, which I think turned out really nice, but I honestly prefer the look with the helmet on. Now that's about it for the Marshal of Mos Pelgo, Cobb Vanth. So, I'll just say it now, this figure of Bo-Katan is definitely my personal favorite out of this group, and honestly my favorite figure that I've made this year. Now, I started off this figure by sculpting the armor out of Procreate, and here you can see that raw, unpainted sculpt. I initially planned on using the Bo-Katan helmet I sculpted and got casted for the Clone Wars version last year, but after sculpting that Boba helmet, I realized that my older Bo helmet actually had a lot of issues with it, which were then fixed with this new sculpt. Now, sculpt aside, the undersuit is painted in black and has a lot of dark gray stitching and some occasional brown details here and there. The armor was painted in a mixed blue color and some Citadel lead belcher, which is like a gunmetal color for that chest armor especially. Now I used some Citadel Rune Fang steel for all of the armored ships, and then in some areas, most notably the helmet, I used some of the blue to chip away at that white paint. Now, a lot of areas also have some Citadel Shade Nuln oil to give it a black wash. Really helps get down into that sculpt and bring out the details. Now, she also has a belt that uses some Brick Arms pouches on it, as well as a sculpted belt buckle. Now, some of my personal favorite painted aspects of this figure include those Night Owl symbols on the shoulders, some of the gauntlet details that are really highlighted by that Nuln oil wash on there, and then the overall paint job on the helmet. I'm just really, really proud of how that came out. Now, on the back, she does have a jetpack, which is a modified Clone Army Customs jetpack, which is the thrusters cut off, basically, and then it was painted up and glued on. Now, if we take that helmet off, we can see a custom-painted face with some sculpted hair, which I think captures her likeness pretty well. I purposefully painted that hair to be more orange than it is red, to better match the Clone Wars version and the one in Rebels, rather than that really kind of weird deep red that it is in live action. I don't know why they chose that color when she's doesn't have that red of hair in the cartoons. Now, to finish her off, Bo is armed with 2 painted Brick Arms West Star 35 pistols. But like I said, I'm really, really proud of this figure, so please let me know what you guys think. My custom Costco Reeves is nearly identical to Bo-Katan, so I don't really have to say too much about this figure. The sculpt was the same, the undersuit stitching was the same, and the belt is the same besides there only being one holster strap and, some color variation on there. Now, some notable differences are the boots being different and having no shin armor, and then the obvious color differences across this whole figure. Koska is primarily this dark blue color, and it doesn't really have any interesting designs other than just being a blank blue canvas, honestly. But she does have those Night Owl symbols on her shoulders. The figure, like Bo, has undergone some weathering using those same techniques, which I think really turned out nice, especially on this figure. Now, underneath her helmet is a face, which I think is okay. It's just the Lego Batman movie Batgirl head with the mask erased off, so her eyes are a little far apart, but I still think it passes for Koska. I'm never going to display her with a helmet off anyway, so I don't really mind it. She's also armed with 2 painted Brick Arms West Star 35 blaster pistols to finish her off. Now, since I have Bo and Koska done, I imagine a lot of people will be asking for an Axe Woves, so I'll for sure be making him once I get more of those Boba-style helmet casts in. I literally only had 2 of them, so I used those on Cobb and then for Boba Fett, which you guys will see here soon. So I'll make him once I get more parts in. But anyway, that is it for Koska Reeves. Ahsoka Tano was a character I was not expecting at all to see in the show, and while I had heard the leaks and am a huge fan of her, I still didn't think she necessarily belonged in the show. Her appearance, to me, felt more like an over-glorified cameo that's just teasing another project for Disney, and it honestly kind of detracted from the show's narrative a little bit, but, she still was really cool to see in live action, and I'm excited to see where the character goes next. I just don't know if she necessarily needed to be in this show, but since she was a pretty big deal in the show and the fandom alike, I knew that I had to make a figure of her. So starting off with the legs, I first sculpted her shin armor, then after that I painted up the boots, the armor, and then did the baggy pants painted effect where it looks like it's kind of folding over itself. Now, on those pants, I did add a little metallic texture, which I think looks pretty cool. Moving up to her torso and her tunic, first I sanded the edges of the torso and curved it, so I'd have more room for the belt, so her arms weren't like sticking out really far, and it also helps give her more of a feminine figure. Now, I painted the bottom robe layer first, and then I used some cloth for that primary robes, and then the metallic cloth on the front. I used some thin vinyl for the parts of the skirt that wrap around the sides, and added some line work onto that, which you guys can see if I move her hands a little bit. Now, on top of that is the belt, which has a sculpted circular buckle and then some painted stitching on there. I also attached and looped a piece of string around her waist for the little beads or whatever she has hanging around her waist. Now, the arms and hands have some gauntlets and gloves sculpted on, and the rest was then painted up. And there's probably some additional details that I could have done here to make it look like the cloth layers were, actual layers on her, I guess, her sleeves, but I left those out to ensure that it wouldn't look too crowded and to save myself some pain on that. Now, the head is the official Clone Wars Ahsoka head that I then repainted to match the tattoos of the live-action version and to make her look a little older. The Leku headpiece was the hardest part of this figure. I sculpted this using a Lego piece as a base, and it went through so many iterations before I was finally happy with it. So I sprayed this sculpt with some Tamiya white primer, painted the blue tats, then did the headband, and voila, she was finished, finally. Now, Ahsoka is armed with her dual white lightsabers. These hilts were designed by Bacon King Lego on Instagram and sold through Nate's Minifigs, so definitely go check them out if you haven't already. After I just got those hilts in, I just painted them up, and the blades themselves are some frosted clear white bars from a knockoff figure, and I thought they honestly worked pretty well here. They're better than, standard white and better than just trans clear, so I thought they were a cool, happy medium there. But yeah, that is essentially it for Ahsoka. Let me know what you guys think. Now, I finished Fennec Shand way earlier this year, and there are definitely things I'd probably change about this now. And honestly, I might just redo this whole figure at some point down the line, maybe for Book of Boba Fett, but for now, I just want to show you what I had. Now, one thing I'm really happy with this figure is the helmet, which I initially didn't plan on making, but since she wears it a lot in the Bad Batch, I'd figured I'd include it since I had the time. Now, this helmet started off as some Knight helmet from Brick Warriors, which I sanded the absolute hell out of and then resculpted to better match Fennec's helmet design. I then sculpted the braids by wrapping some Procreate rods together that were like semi-cured, so they weren't, fully applicable. Like you couldn't mess with them still, but you could still twist them a little bit and they'd hold their shape. So that's what I did. I just wrapped 3 rods around each other and then glued them onto the back. Since the helmet's off, we can take a better look at the face, which is something I want to revamp in the future since I think it could be way better than it is currently. Basically, everything about the head is something I want to change besides the helmet, so I'll get to that hopefully in a version 2 later down the line. But enough griping with the figure, let's move on to the rest of it. There's some straps on the boots that are painted around in this reddish-orange color. I went for the Mandalorian accurate color rather than the Bad Batch accurate color, which is more orange, but in the Mandalorian she's a little more red, so went with that instead. Now on her waist is her skirt piece, which has some of these triangular striping on it, which I really am fond of. Over top that skirt is a belt with a sculpted device on it. Not sure what it is, but I sculpted that and glued it on. Now on the torso, I tried to use some various finishes like gloss and semi-gloss and matte for the black, which gives it kind of a cool look and makes all of the sections of it look a little different from each other. But if I redo this figure in the future, I might try to do a very thin sculpt for that upside-down V-shape leading to the collar, because this part got a little messy when I was trying to clean up some line work. So that's something I'd like to revisit in the future. Moving on to the arms, they do have some striping on it, both at the wrists and at the bicep area, as well as that sculpted elbow pad. Now, slapping that helmet back on, I did want to say that I added some weathering on it using, the same techniques I've been using with that Rune Fang steel by Citadel. Then that Citadel Nuln Oil really helps seep down into that panel lining of that sculpt and really bring out those details, which I am really proud of. To finish her off, she does have a painted Brick Arms rifle. Now, going along with Fennec is, of course, the legend Boba Fett. Now, Boba was the last figure I worked on for this project, and I'm really, really pleased with how he turned out. I made sure to really take my time with him, since seeing him back alive in the Star Wars universe was one of my biggest wants with this show and just with Disney taking over Star Wars in general, and I wanted to do that character justice. Obviously, I made Boba in his reforged armor from the final 2 episodes of Season 2, since I made Cobb in that damaged version of the armor. Now, just to get it out of the way, Boba has an overmolded Brick Arms EE3 rifle. I picked this up at Brick Fair just because I wanted some cool-looking gun for him, and didn't want to paint it, so I figured getting this would be pretty cool. So we'll take that away and take a better look at this figure. Starting off with the legs, I painted the front of the boots, sculpted the knee pads, and sculpted the baggy pants. Now, a lot of people assume Boba has a skirt or like a waistcape, but no, he actually has baggy pants. This is pointed out to me by someone on Instagram, and also the Hot Toys figure is pretty evident on that, so I was able to use that as some nice reference. And since these pants droop over the knee pads, I figured I have to sculpt them, since painting them, like I did for Ahsoka, would be a little too hard and not really make too much sense. I wouldn't get the effect that I wanted. So I did a very light sculpt on those, which I'm really happy with. I decided to match that style of the sculpted pants and sculpt the bits of cloth hanging down from his waist, which were a lot of fun. I'm really happy I did that instead of doing something flat like vinyl or cloth. Just gives it a little more character. Over top that is a belt that has this 3-toned stitching on it with a brown, dark brown, and the kind of mustard yellow. Then over top that is a brown belt with some sculpted pouches glued on and a gold buckle. Now, like Cobb, I used one of my torso casts for the chest armor and painted it up with a new Fire Spray logo in the corner there. The arms are the same casts as the one on Cobb, but I sculpted the shoulder sleeves over top the shoulder armor, which I think looks really nice. These were then painted up, including a fresh Mythosaur skull on one of his shoulders. One other thing, I did sculpt a little scarf like Cobb, and it seems like there's a little bit of a trend going on with Boba's armor here. A lot of these guys like wearing scarves. Now, the jetpack on his back is a mix of parts from Clunnery Customs and Nate's Minifigs. I basically combined my favorite parts of each and then painted it up. The helmet sculpt is the same as the one on Cobb. I just painted it to look clean, but I did add a few little dings here and there just to give it a little bit of character. And the Hot Toys version and the Black Series helmet did have a little bit on there, so I wanted to be a little accurate with that. So it's not completely pristine. But underneath that bucket is the official Boba head from Lego, since I think it works just fine. It's a very nice print on there. Of course, there's some stuff I could do, but I didn't really see the need to really make an entirely new head. But who knows, maybe I might change my mind once Book of Boba Fett rolls around and make a new head for this guy. But anyway, that is going to be it for Boba Fett. Migs Mayfeld was probably the easiest out of the actual minifigures to make out of this bunch. I know a lot of these characters in this are from Season 2, but I went for Mayfeld's Season 1 appearance since I think it's a lot cooler than that tank driver armor. Plus, I really wanted to use that Brick Arms Exo pack. But like I said, this guy was pretty simple to make. I just used some E-tape and some vinyl for his holsters, the straps, and his harness. Then I used some cloth for that main belt wrapping around his waist. Everything else was just painted up in like dark brown and some black for that crosshatch pattern. I can't remember what the base for the head was, but everything on that besides the eyes was painted to match Bill Burr's likeness to the best of my ability, and I think it turned out pretty good. But I do think the coolest part about this figure is this Brick Arms Exo pack. I just love how it can actually fold up and actually has some functionality with it, and really made this figure, because this would have been a pain to make if Brick Arms hadn't done it. It's definitely one of the coolest pieces I think Will Chapman has made. But yeah, that is it for Mayfeld. So I've had these Dark Troopers sitting on my desk for literal months at this point, so I'm glad I finally got around to painting them up. Now, these were sent to me by Custom Brick Builder and remodeled by both him and Skylu 3D Design. Skylu made some Black Series scaled Dark Troopers, and then CBB took that model and scaled it down and added some Lego-style hands, some feet, and joints to it. He was the guy that helped me out with those Magna Guards I made earlier this year, and he also sent me these at the same exact time. But CBB is no longer in the community, so you can't really get these kits anymore, unfortunately, unless someone else is selling the ones they already have, so I'm happy I got them when I did. All I had to do on these guys was just paint them up in black, add some silver details, paint the red for the eyes and the buttons on the chest, and then seal them using a gloss sealer. To finish them off, I just slapped on some Brick Arms blasters, and they look pretty good. So that is it for these Dark Troopers. Luke Skywalker is the last figure I have to show you guys for this project. I made Luke back in December of last year, riding off the hype of the finale, so I've had him ready to go for a long time, so let's get right into it. The boots have some E-tape running around and have that lower stitching and some trim painted onto that. I also painted some wrinkle creases indicating that those pants were tucked into his boots like they are in the actual costume. Now, the bulk of the work was done on his tunic, which is made out of some Lego sail cloth. If you guys are interested in seeing how I make tunics like this, be sure to check out my tutorial up in that little link in the corner. On this cloth, I'm really fond of that gray detailing I did, especially with the wrinkles for some reason. I don't know, it just looks pretty pleasing to me, so I don't know if it's just me or what, so let me know. The belt wrapping around the waist was made from E-tape and has a metal buckle on it and some other little details painted onto it. His cape is a painted Cape Madness cape I got a long time ago, and then I think I probably had to cut that to size. It's been so long since I made this guy, so it's a little hard to remember exactly what I did. But I do know that his head is the standard Luke head with just some additional facial features painted on, such as like the wrinkles around his mouth and his chin, and some eye reshaping. Now, his hair was sculpted and painted by my friend AJ, also known as AnonFigs on Instagram, since I'd been wanting to collab with him for a while, and at the time, he had made a really nice-looking Luke Skywalker hair, so I asked him to make another one for me, and he did. So, really happy to be able to work with AJ on that. But, of course, I did have to make an alternate hood piece for him. This was a sculpted hood I made from scratch, and I think it's all right. Nothing too fancy, but it gets the job done and covers his eyes like I wanted it to. Lastly, Luke Skywalker has a custom lightsaber hilt that I designed in 3D software, and resin prints of it are available now through Nate's Minifigs. A link will be in the description below. But after I got that printed out, I was able to paint that up, seal it up, and put it on this guy, and I think it looks perfect. Anyway, I thought it would be fitting to close off this massive project on Luke Skywalker. Seeing him back in his Jedi Prime was just an absolute delight. I cannot express how happy I was to see him again, but I imagine most people probably felt the same exact way. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Phew, we made it. It's been a while. Again, I'm very sorry that this project took so long to get finished, but I hope you guys can understand the delays, and I hope it was worth it for you guys. But thank you guys so much for sticking with me through that time. I really, really appreciate you all. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later.